Lamborn's office told us on Friday that when the congressman said, quote, "A lot of us are talking to generals behind the scenes," his office told us that, in fact, the congressman was not referring to any current actions. He was, quote, "referring to things in the past." This weekend, a spokesman for Mr. Lamborn elaborated on those past times that the congressman had urged generals to resign. He told the Colorado Springs Gazette he was talking about negotiations he had done when defense budget cuts were suggested last year, and also when President Obama ended the don't ask, don't tell policy. So that was when Congressman Lamborn and others, he says, were encouraging generals to resign from the military, at least according to his office. I have to say, that may be the explanation. That's not really what it sounded like when he said it.
Let me reassure you on this. A lot of us are talking to the generals behind the scenes saying, hey, if you disagree with the policy that the White House has given you, let's have a resignation. Let's have a public resignation and state your protests and go out in a blaze of glory.
Congressman Lamborn is now trying to say that he forgot to put that whole statement in the past tense. That when he said, "a lot of us are talking," that's not at all what he meant. Really, he was only trying to get generals to quit the military in the past, in past years, when we were also at war. That explanation has not been enough to comfort members of even Doug Lamborn's own party. Republican Congressman Mike Coffman of Colorado tweeted a link to Doug Lamborn's comments and then said this. He says, "As a Marine combat veteran, I know to keep my politics off the battlefield." Today, Republican Congressman Cory Gardner, who's running for Senate in Colorado, he also distanced himself from Mr. Lamborn, put out a statement saying that there's no room for partisan politics in the military. Both Mike Coffman and Cory Gardner are in tough, close races right now in Colorado, so it's understandable that they would not want to be associated with, effectively trying to inspire mutiny in the military during wartime. But in addition to those two guys in Colorado, as luck would have it, Doug Lamborn is also in a race of his own right now. And it turns out that Doug Lamborn, the guy who says he is secretly urging generals from the U.S. military to quit the military, Doug Lamborn is himself right now running against a retired general, one with 32 years experience in the United States Air Force. He's a conservative Democrat named Irv Halter, and he's now running in a congressional race in Colorado that just got a lot more interesting. I should tell you that we asked Congressman Lamborn again to come on the show tonight to talk about this matter. His office kind of laughed and then gave us a very firm no to our request. I live in hope that they'll change their minds. We are, however, able to talk tonight with the retired Air Force Major General who is running against Doug Lamborn in Colorado's 5th District. His name is General Irv Halter. General Halter, really happy to have you here tonight. Thanks for being here.
And good evening. Thanks for having me.
As I understand it, General, your district has a huge population of service members and veterans. How do you think service members and veterans hear this when Doug Lamborn makes a comment like this about wanting generals to quit?
Well, I think their reaction was what my reaction was, which was I was appalled. In fact, I had to ask them to show it to me twice before I believed what I heard. And having talked to veterans around the district, we have almost 100,000 here. When they've seen this, have all had the same view. A sitting member of Congress, it is absolutely inappropriate for them to be encouraging military members, especially senior officers, to resign their commissions to make a political point.
Is there any reason to believe that he's just making this up? I mean, there's always the possibility that he hasn't done anything like this. He wants to sound tough in front of a crowd. This is, in fact, something outlandish that he'd never do. Or do you think that Congressman Lamborn has actually been trying to essentially pull off this kind of coup? Is there any evidence that this sort of lobbying is happening?
Well, I certainly don't have any evidence, but there are a lot of questions out there. I mean, it is interesting that Mr. Lamborn, one, won't sit here on your show and talk about this with you. He hasn't talked to our local TV stations, to the best of my knowledge, either. And he is basically now in a position where he's spending time trying to back off from the remarks, but he has not denied them. He's basically stays with his story. And whether it was in the past or in the recent past or the distant past, the fact is, as you mentioned, he has done this. And I think if it was a made-up story, by this point, he would have decided to reverse course and just admit that he had fibbed.